Last time we were talking all about soul wounds
It was incredible.
really fantastic. And I know a lot of you reached out and said, hey, more of this.
Yeah.
So here we are. This is episode 2 of Black Trauma is Not Black Culture.
That's right.
And this time we're going to zero in on one specific soul wound that Sat Ra explores.
Yeah.
We're going to build on those ideas from soul wounds and jump into a brand new book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's called Transforming the Black Mother Wound, Overcoming Toxic Shame.
That's right. Comes out November 1st.
Mark your calendars.
Wow. That title's pretty intense.
Right. And you know what's really interesting?
What's that?
Transforming the Black Mother Wound actually builds on ideas from the Black Mother Wound and soul wounds.
Oh, wow. So it's like a continuation of the conversation.
Totally. It gives us even more insight into Black trauma and how it plays out. We're going to be unpacking a lot today.
Sounds like it. What are we diving into?
Well, we're going to try to understand that difference between healthy and toxic shame, right? Explore where it all comes from in Black lives.
Okay.
And even take a look at how it shows up in families. We'll even touch on that KCTR models for recovery.
Oh, interesting. I've heard about that.
Yeah. You know, for the full picture, though, I highly recommend checking out the book.
I bet. So let's start with the basics.
Can you break it down? What is the Black Mother Wound?
Absolutely. So imagine like all of the weight of history, right, on the shoulders of Black women. Centuries of just like systemic oppression, everything slavery, Jim Crow, and even today with the discrimination. And that trauma, it doesn't just vanish. It kind of like echoes through the generations. And that creates what Mott Sat-Ra calls the Black Mother Wound.
So this isn't just about individual mothers and their kids, right? This is about something bigger.
Exactly. It's like this ripple effect. And it impacts every area of life. Relationships, how you see yourself, even your physical health.
It's true. It's like a reminder that these historical wounds, and they don't just stay in your mind, they impact your whole body.
Your soul, too. And that's where Mott Sat-Ra's work is so fascinating. She uses this ancient Kemetic wisdom to explore this wound.
Kemetic wisdom, what's that all about?
So she draws upon this principle of Mott. It represents order, truth, justice, balance. And her argument is that historical trauma, it really took away that sense of balance from Black women.
So it's like this fundamental disconnect from who they truly are.
Exactly. A rupture. It's this super deep-seated belief that we are just inherently flawed or unworthy as people.
Oh, wow.
Like you're carrying around this weight, this invisible weight that tells you that you're not good enough no matter what.
That sounds really heavy.
It is, and it can just crush your spirit. And what's kind of scary is that it often works on an unconscious level.
So you might not even realize you're carrying it.
Exactly. But it still affects you, your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior. It's powerful.
Wow. So how does this all connect to the experiences of Black people? I mean, what are the root causes of this toxic shame?
Well, the book dives into how historical trauma plays a huge role.
Oh, I bet.
We're talking slavery, Jim Crow, ongoing racism.
It's a lot.
It is. And all these experiences, they created this collective wound that's just passed down through generations.
Like a cycle of trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It all contributes to this feeling of, not being good enough, a sense of shame within the Black community.
It's almost like the trauma itself gets internalized and becomes a part of how people see themselves.
Exactly. And it's not just individual experiences, There are these powerful narratives and stereotypes that reinforce it.
Like what?
Well, the book talks about the Moynihan Report from way back in 1965.
Oh, yeah.
It basically blamed Black families, especially Black mothers, for social problems.
Well, that's messed up.
It is. It created these really harmful stereotypes that even though they've been debunked, still linger today.
Which adds another layer to the shame, right? Like now it's not just surviving oppression, but it's also feeling like you have to measure up to these standards that were never meant for you.
Exactly. It's exhausting, this constant pressure to prove yourself, to fit in, to be something you're not. Some scholars even call it race battle fatigue.
Race battle fatigue. I like that. It's very descriptive. The mental and emotional toll of constantly navigating a world that just wasn't designed for you.
Right. And all of this, the historical trauma, the racism, the pressure to conform, it just keeps feeding this toxic shame. And it spills over into families, too.
Right. I remember the book talked about certain roles people often take on in families struggling with that.
Yes. Like the hero, the scapegoat, the lost child.
Right.
These roles are how people try to cope with all that toxic shame in the family system.
Oh, I see.
And they might help in the short term, but ultimately they just keep those cycles of pain going.
So it's not really a solution, it's more like a temporary fix.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound.
And then that wound just keeps festering.
Exactly.
The book shares Jerome's story, which really illustrates this.
Oh yeah, Jerome's story is so powerful.
His parents had so much shame from their own trauma, and it impacted how they raised him. Ultimately, he ended up struggling with addiction and relationships.
It's like a chain reaction, isn't it?
It is. And it highlights how shame can echo through generations, affecting not just individuals, but entire families. It's this complex web of pain.
A web that can feel impossible to untangle.
Exactly. So, knowing all this, where do we even begin to heal? Is there any way out of this cycle of toxic shame?
That's where the book really shines. It offers this glimmer of hope. Sat Rowe introduces the KCTR model. It's like this framework for, understanding and then addressing toxic shame. Realize, respond, resist, reclaim.
Okay, I like that. KCTR, I can remember that.
It's like a compass, points you in the right direction, but you still got to do the work.
Okay, so it's a guide. It's not going to magically fix everything.
Right, exactly. Like with a compass, you got to take those steps yourself. So the first step is realize.
Realize.
It's about awareness. Becoming aware of how toxic shame has impacted your life.
So like shining a light on it, bringing it out into the open.
That's it. Recognizing those patterns and connecting the dots, between your experiences and the shame you carry.
Like, oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah. And then you move on to respond. That's where you make a conscious choice to break those patterns.
So it's about taking action.
Exactly. It's about saying no to that cycle. Then we have resist.
Resist. Okay.
This one's about pushing back against those thoughts and behaviors that keep the shame going.
So that's where the real work comes in.
It can be tough. You're challenging those deep-seated beliefs, those messages you've internalized for so long.
Right, those messages we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. You're taking back your power. And finally, we reach reclaim.
Reclaim.
This is where you reclaim your worth, your power, your true self. You define yourself, not the shame.
It sounds empowering. Like finally breaking free.
It is. It's a process, though, It's not a straight line. Sometimes you gotta circle back.
Makes sense. Healing takes time.
It does. And the book talks about the importance of community and ancestral practices, too, which is so important.
Yeah, I was going to say, that seems like a huge part of it. Connecting with others who understand.
Absolutely. And tapping into the wisdom of those who came before us. It's like they're there with you, offering support and strength. It's powerful stuff.
It is. It's like, even though we're talking about really tough things, there's this sense of hope that comes from knowing you're not alone.
Right. And, the book introduces this really interesting concept called settler agnosia.
Settler agnosia. Never heard of that. What is it?
It's basically like the refusal of white settler societies to acknowledge the harm they've caused, with colonization and enslavement.
Oh, wow. So it's like a collective blind spot.
That's it. They just don't see it, or they don't want to see it.
And if they don't see it, they can't be responsible for it, right?
Exactly. And so then they just keep projecting their own guilt and shame onto, people they've oppressed.
It's like saying, we're not the problem, you are, and then setting up systems to prove it.
You got it. And that projection of shame is everywhere. You see it in the media, in those policies, in the way violence has been used against Black people. To control and suppress.
Yeah, it's like a constant reminder that you don't belong.
And it's not just physical violence either, right? It's the microaggressions, those subtle ways that make you feel less than.
It's like an invisible weight that nobody else acknowledges you're carrying, which just makes it heavier.
It's a lot to carry. It all feeds into that race battle fatigue we were talking about.
And so understanding this bigger context of white supremacy and colonialism, it's crucial to healing, isn't it?
It really is. Because then you can see that toxic shame isn't your fault. It's the result of centuries of oppression.
It takes the blame off the individual and puts it where it belongs, on the systems that created the harm.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Healing isn't just about the individual. It's about changing those systems, too.
So it's a much bigger thing. It's about personal and social transformation.
That's the only way to really break these cycles.
Okay, so where do we start? I mean, these systems are so ingrained, so powerful. What can we actually do to make a difference?
Well, Sat-Ra talks about reclaiming those ancestral practices, our traditions. That's a good place to start.
What does that look like in practice?
It could be a lot of things, like honoring your ancestors, learning about your family history, engaging in rituals, whatever connects you to that source of strength and wisdom.
It's like we have this inner strength, this resilience passed down from those who came before us.
And it's there for us to tap into. It's not just about looking back, though. It's about bringing those traditions forward, making them relevant today.
Like mindfulness and meditation. They have roots in those traditions.
And they can be so helpful for healing, for dealing with trauma.
Absolutely.
It's about taking those practices and making them your own.
I love that. It's like a reclaiming and a reinvention.
And it's not just individual, right? The book talks about community, too. Creating those spaces where Black people feel seen and heard.
Safe spaces, supportive spaces.
Yes, where you can just be yourself. That's so important for healing. And then on a bigger level, we have to advocate for those policies and practices that address systemic racism.
Promote equity and justice for everybody.
Right. That's where real change happens.
So it's a multi-level approach.
Exactly. It's personal, communal, and systemic, all at the same time.
It's about changing the world from the inside out.
It's a long journey, but understanding toxic shame and working together, we can create a better world, a more just world.
A world where future generations don't have to carry this burden.
Exactly. We can heal those wounds.
It feels so hopeful. It's like, even though we're talking about these difficult topics, there's this underlying sense of possibility, like we can create something better. That feels like a good place to pause for now. Ever feel like you're drowning in to-do lists? Especially if you're a solopreneur, nomadpreneur, juggling a million things at once for your startup. Clients, projects, invoices. It's a lot.
It really is. For small businesses and startups, time equals money, right? Every minute you're not bogged down in admin is a minute you could be growing your business.
And that's where B1 Thrive says their Thrive Cloud comes in. Could Thrive Cloud be like your secret weapon?
Yeah.
Getting all that admin stuff organized, giving you more time to actually focus on your business.
It's definitely worth checking out. It's user-friendly, it's affordable, it works wherever you are. That's a pretty compelling package for solopreneurs, nomadpreneurs, startups, anyone really. And don't forget, they've got that free trial.
Exactly. Go to b1thrive.com, give it a shot, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
You might just find that Thrive Cloud is that missing piece you've been looking for, even if your office is a beach in Bali. Welcome back. I want to shift gears a bit now. We've been focusing on the bigger picture, but what about those practical steps? What can we do individually to start healing from toxic shame?
That's where transforming the Black mother wound gets really practical.
Oh, good. I love practical advice.
It's got all these exercises and affirmations.
Awesome. So it's like a guidebook.
Yeah, it gives you that roadmap for healing.
Perfect. I love a good roadmap. So what are some of those key strategies?
Self-compassion, that's a big one.
Okay, self-compassion.
Toxic shame feeds on that self-criticism,
Yeah, that judging yourself all the time.
Right. It tells you you're not good enough, you're flawed. Self-compassion is like the opposite of that.
It's like being kind to yourself.
Exactly. Treat yourself like you would treat someone you love.
I get it. But honestly, that's way easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you've been living with those messages for so long.
Right. They become a part of you.
Takes practice. But the book offers a lot of different tools like mindfulness.
Meditation,
yeah. Connecting with nature.
Oh, I love that.
Being outside.
Yes. There's something about nature that's so grounding.
I agree. It's like hitting the reset button. And, connecting with nature, it resonates with a lot of ancestral traditions, too.
Speaking of which, the book really emphasizes reclaiming our heritage, doesn't it? Like connecting with our ancestors can be a source of healing and strength.
Absolutely. Those connections can be so powerful. Honoring your ancestors, learning about your family history, practicing those rituals, it all helps you tap into that deep well of resilience.
Like we have this strength inside us that's been passed down through generations.
Exactly. We're not starting from scratch, And for me, that's what makes Sakura's work so powerful. Healing isn't just about fixing ourselves. It's about reconnecting with this legacy of strength, of love, of resistance.
It's beautiful. It takes shame, which feels so isolating, and makes it a shared experience. And when you share it, you can start to heal together.
Right. It becomes a collective wound. And when we acknowledge that, we can start healing as a community.
It's about breaking the cycle, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come.
Exactly. So they don't have to carry the same weight.
Well, this has been heavy.
Yeah.
But also incredibly insightful. And even with all the heaviness, I'm leaving with a sense of hope. It's like learning about all this opens up the possibility of something different, something better.
I agree. Transforming the Black Mother wound really dives deep into this complex issue, and we've only just scratched the surface here.
We always love to hear from you. What resonated with you? What are you taking away from this conversation?
Yeah, keep the conversation going, and if you want to dive even deeper, definitely check out the book.
It's a journey worth taking.
It really is.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, everyone, keep diving deep and keep seeking those transformative truths.